So today we're going to talk about politics and legislators. So on your notes, you should have a section of your notes where we're going to have 4 different areas. The very first one we're going to look at would be majority and minority parties. Majority parties are the parties that have the most people in them, and minority parties would be the people who have the least amount of people in them comparatively. So if we were to look at a map of the House of Representatives, you can see here that there are, out of 435 people, or dots right here, one side clearly has way more people than the other side. So in this case, the Republicans have a majority, while the Democrats, the blue side, have a minority. Now, in the Senate, it's a little bit more evenly split, but still the Republicans currently hold a majority, and the Democrats have a minority. Now, these 2 yellow dots right here, these would be the 2 independents that are senators, one of which his name is Bernie Sanders, and I forget the name of the other fellow. Why is it good to be in the majority party? 2 different reasons. One, it's easier to get past laws that you support, and number 2, you get to decide who your leader is going to be. So we can back up a second and we look at this. Both Republicans have both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate currently. And what that is going to mean is that our Speaker of the House, currently Paul Ryan, he gets to decide what gets talked about on the House floor. So if he doesn't want to talk about health care, they don't talk about health care. And the same thing for the Senate. The President pro tempore or the floor leaders are going to make a lot of the decisions when it comes to what and how and how long we're going to talk about things. And so the majority party has got those 2 advantages. Once you're able to pick your leader, then it's easier for you to decide what you're going to talk about, and then you can also get the votes to pass these things. So there's Paul Ryan right there. Oh, sorry. And there is our President pro tempore, whose name I'm drawing a blank on. It'll come to me in a little while, though, promise. Now, when we talk about Congress, we do have to know that there are certain perks and there are certain negatives to being a congressman. So here are some of the benefits, and I'll go through and I'll explain each one of them. So you need to write them down. So feel free to pause the video. Okay. All right. So the franking privilege says that. My apologies. That you can mail things for free. Congressmen typically have to mail lots and lots of things out to their constituents, and so the franking privilege allows them to do that. They get a nice 6-figure salary. The Speaker of the House and the President pro tempore make the most because they are in the $200,000 range. And everybody else is pulling in, somewhere $100,000 less than that. But still, they're not hurting. They get free office space. That means something that there's not a lot of space in Washington, D.C., and so they get a free office. They also get immunity. That means they get protections from certain, like say, traffic tickets or things that might impede them from getting to work on time. They also have retirement and health benefits. This is one of the issues that we currently have, is that if we look at this, which is kind of old, if you look at ends in 2009, the congressional salaries has been in a steady increase. And if you recall, Amendment 27 prohibits Congress from raising their own salaries before the next congressional election. And while that was passed in 1991, if you notice, it kind of didn't really do a whole lot. You can see a definite change for a moment, and then they keep on increasing their salaries. And this is an issue because Congress controls money. So because they get to control their money, they get to control money. That means they control their raise or how much money they do or they don't make, compared to the median U.S. household income. Now, as someone with a female with a 4-year degree, this right here is more than what I make. And so if we consider how much they're making, it's kind of a lot compared to the rest of us. franking privilege. They're getting to mail stuff for free, and so it'll say this up in the upper right-hand corner. It'll be official business. And then when we look, here's just a little political cartoon that we have on the left side, someone who's on Social Security. He's paid into Social Security his entire life. And on average, they make a little over $1,000 a month. And $1,000 does not go very far at all. However, we have a congressman on this side saying that we have a freeloader living off the system. However, congressional benefits include free health care. They have a wonderful retirement system. They get 67 paid holidays. And just in case you're wondering, we as students and teachers in the public school system do not get 67 paid holidays. This includes things like Arbor Day, which is ridiculous in my opinion. And they get unlimited sick time, etc. They get several more benefits. And they're the ones who give themselves benefits because they're the ones who make the laws. And it's just something for us to be aware of. Now, what happens if a congressman gets in trouble? There's two things that could happen. They could get expelled by a 2/3 vote of Congress. They've not expelled anybody in quite a long time. If I'm recalling correctly, the last time they got someone got expelled, it was during the Civil War, because they were on the Confederate side. But maybe there's been somebody who did some naughty behavior. Anyway, we can look into that because we have a link right here that describes all the senators that have been expelled or censured. And I encourage you to click on it and browse through and see what terrible things these people have done. Censure is just it's not a literal slap on the wrist. It's a figurative one. And what it's like, so it's just a, hey, don't do that anymore type thing. And you're just being warned about what you're doing wrong. So it's kind of a, hey, put away your cell phone. I'm not going to take it right now, but here's your warning. Not that they can't have their cell phones. Now, this is something that's going on a lot in our state. So when we look at our state and how it's drawn exactly, we have got apportionment. And so what that means is that the population changes the size of a district. So each local government, which gets started by a charter, and you have a charter goes through the government. So like state governments can say, if we're going to have a charter, you have to have permission to like start your own town. Say it was going to be called like Johnville. You have to go through the government of the state in order to decide that. Apportionment is when each district is going to be drawn based on population. So if you lived in, say, Raleigh or Charlotte, North Carolina, your district should be smaller than one in which there's going to be a population of like 500 people, because so many people live in that area. The Constitution must follow or abide by what the charter is saying. So if you're saying I'm going to start a new town and it's going to be called this, your Constitution has to follow it. Other districting things. How do we know how many people are in an area? And that comes back to the census. The census is taken at once every 10 years. It started in 1790, and then it continued 1800, 1810, and so forth. The last one was in 2010, and the next one will be in 2020. And what they do with those numbers is they figure out, oh, hey, a lot of people have moved to this town. So we need to maybe redraw our area or change up the districts, or if people have left a town. They can also consider annexing an area, and all that means is that they're going to add an area to a city. So say our city that we live in is growing, then we could sit here and say, you know what, let's add this extra neighborhood into our city. Now, districting has got a lot to do with politics, and so there's a video down below. But you're going to have to watch that video separately from this one. Gerrymandering is this thing named by, it's Elbridge Gerry, was a man who, he drew districts in a way that benefited a certain political party. And when people saw these districts, they said, hey, it looks like a salamander. So they called it gerrymandering. Now, what this does is it makes things unfair for the minority party. For example, in North Carolina, the courts have recently decided that our districts have been gerrymandered. That the districts make it so that one party is more likely to win versus another, or that one one district is going to have a predominant race in it versus another. And it's not supposed to be like that because it's supposed to be equally fair. So you can watch that video on your own. And then we're going to talk about 3 very vague topics. Riders are when you have unrelated pieces of information onto a bill. So say the President of the United States had a bill come across his desk that dealt with healthcare or education. Let's pick healthcare. And in this healthcare bill, which should talk about just healthcare, one of the senators or representatives could sneak in something that says, there's going to be an extra $50 million given to Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And it's completely unrelated to healthcare. It has, and my example here it's got nothing to do with healthcare, and yet they're sneaking it on because they're saying, I'll vote yes on this bill if you let my rider come on. And so it's kind of a quid pro quo system of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Congressmen can also try to earmark or pork barrel some spending, and that's when they're spending money on a specific project. Walter B. Jones has done this, so that Walter B. Jones has if as you're leaving the county that we live in, there's a place called the Walter B. Jones Rehab Facility, and that is for people who need assistance with beating addiction. And he used federal tax dollars. He earmarked a bill and said, this money is going to go just to this part of North Carolina, which a lot of people may view as wrong because those are federal tax dollars. So that means people who pay taxes in California and Alaska, they're all contributing to this. So this is spending money on a specific project, which brings us down here to not those, but this right here, that our congressman, here's Walter B. Jones, for example, and he's bringing home the bacon. He's bringing home the good stuff, and we're very pleased with him. However, if another congressman in another state is bringing home the bacon, they look entirely, we're going to judge them and say, hey, those are our tax dollars. So typically pork barrel spending, which you can come over here, you can click on these links and you can find where they're spending money on crazy things that do not benefit us at all, which is kind of alarming. And it's just about being aware and making sure that you know what's going on. All right, so that's all we have for today.